There's nothing called darkness, it's just the absence of light. There's nothing called a problem, it's just the absence of an idea to find a solution. On that wonderful note, may I request Professor Matthew Anthony, Academic Head, iNurture Education Solutions, who has gracefully consented to present the conference report today.
Thank you, Shravan sir. Thank you, Madhavi, for your kind words. Presenting a conference report that ran over 2 days. We had speakers talk about Digital India, about robotics. My one wish is that I was a robo. I could have recorded everything. Dr. Vinod would have done the analytics. Somebody else would have done a word cloud. It would have picked out all the keywords over the 2 days, and all I would have to do is press one button and everything would be in front of you. Nevertheless, being a human being, because one of the concepts that people spoke about was with robotics, with technology, you need human connect. I want to bring that human connect to you. What I will be sharing, it can't be everything. I would do it for the benefit of those who are not here for the 2 days. There were certain things that you yourself would have found pertinent to your life, and you may remember it, but I could only add on things that I thought made a lot of sense to me. When we thought of the title, Demographics, Dividend or Disaster, in the process of getting research papers, we were actually surprised, but it did happen. People said, what is dividend? I understand dividend when if I own shares, I get paid dividend. But in this context, what is dividend? I'm partly afraid and fearful that even after 2 days of the conference, perhaps the dividend part has not yet registered on some people here. So let me say, when we talk about demographic dividend, what is meant by it is that it leads to accelerated economic growth. Demographic dividend leads to accelerated economic growth when there's a decline in a country's mortality and fertility rate. Mortality and fertility are connected because in India and other places, we have lots of children, especially in rural areas, because we do not think that the children that we have are actually going to survive. And you have a Lifebuoy commercial, if some of you have seen it, which talks about this man walking on his hands, and there are people following him, and it goes on, and there's a reporter who joins the people who are following him. You can go on YouTube and see it, and she inquires as to why is he doing that. And by the time you get to know the story, he reaches a temple and then he actually gets down. He's walking on his hands for whatever number of kilometers. And the reason he was doing that is that his son actually survived past 5 years. Today, living in a city, we may not recognize that mortality is a huge issue in our country. And when you are living in an agricultural economy, you need hands to till the field. And because you're not sure about the mortality rate, you tend to have more children. But with development, the demographic dividend says that as with healthcare improves, the mortality rate improves and the fertility rate actually comes down. So in effect, what happens is something called a demographic transition. That in a particular population, you have a larger number of people who are of working age, a lower number of people who are dependent on those who are of a working age. And when I'm talking about dependence, I'm talking about dependence of those who are younger, your children, and dependence of those who are your parents, older grandparents. As one of the speakers, Mr. Vivek Kulkarni, very nicely said it, that while we have a demographic dividend today, we are a young country, 30 years hence, we will be an old country because 50% of our population will be beyond 50 years. Think of the medical bill. The point he was making is 85% of your medical bill happens in the last years of your life when you actually don't have the money. You may not even be in your senses to pay those bills. So you go through a whole life paying 15% of a medical bill, and when you're really old, 85% has to be paid. Who is going to pay it? It is the younger generation who will pay it. So when we are talking about demographics dividend, demographics disaster, if you do not manage this transition right in terms of having the right economic and social policies, if you were to transport yourself to 2050, just imagine what the scenario will be. So that being the theme of the conference, hopefully some of what has been said by the speakers over the last 2 days has registered with you, particularly with those who are doing their research in this area. You have presented your research paper. I'm not sure, because I've not gone through your research paper, with what level of rigor you have done it. But those who have actually taken the trouble to do it well would have been fairly aghast if they'd done the research to imagine what it could be if we do not have the right policies in place. Having said that, very quickly, I will run you through the 2 days. Do pardon me if it tends to be a little brief. We got a good start to our conference by the presentation, the talk that was given by the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Sundarajan, where he said over so many years with a colleague called Nandagopal, he has been writing about demographics. And he also appreciates that the School of Commerce has decided to take this up as a subject and debate it. And he wished, along with the President of JGI, Chanraj Roychand, to generate enough heat. And his belief is when there is enough heat, there's also going to be light. And what he really meant by that is illuminating the issues that dominate something called demographic dividend, bring about that awareness, and actually encourage a lot more research in this area. And it is my hope that those who have gone through these 2 days will take up the subject seriously once again, if you have not already done so, and pursue the research in this area, because this is going to be a subject that's going to be topical for the next 30 years, which I presume would be your working age. This was followed up beautifully by Dr. A. Ravindra. I recall Dr. Ravindra as one of those fearless bureaucrats. I only know of 3 fearless bureaucrats. One was Alphonse, who was called the demolition man in Delhi. He demolished most of the unauthorized buildings by a very powerful politician. Second was Mr. Kerner in Mumbai. And the third was Ravindra, who was trying in his own way as a BDA commissioner to break the nexus between politicians and builders. Why I'm emphasizing that is of the themes that we have over here, which is empower, create the enabling environment, educate, and employ. One of the things in India particularly to do with employment are 2 other things. One is an element of migration. Should I be restricted just to where I am living to get an opportunity? That is limiting. There were discussion about migration from rural to urban. But I'm saying in the urban areas itself, there may be IT jobs only in Bangalore. There may be IT jobs elsewhere. So industries tend to come together in areas because the supporting structure is there. When I am in Delhi and I want to migrate to Bangalore for a job, one of the things that concerns me is what? Housing. I should have affordable housing so that I can migrate easily to newer job opportunities. And the third thing, particularly to India, as we discussed, is this whole concept of if you don't have a job, you don't have a bride. Right? And therefore, there is such high dependence on you being employed for you to have a normal existence. And therefore, the whole concept of the enabling environment, the education, and the employment also has social ramification in the area to do with housing, to do with marriage, and of course unrests that are created through Maoists and other such groups who may condemn or tribals. But the real reason for all of this comes down to no job opportunities. So when you have fearless bureaucrats like Ravindra who are trying to break such nexus, we need to support them. But I only mention that because we have the honor of having him here. And from whatever I heard of him, all his accomplishments, he seems such an unassuming person, self-deprecating. He said very openly, I'm not an expert in demographics, but I've been called, so I will speak upon it. What I liked about him, and I'm only stressing on that, because of this whole concept of lifelong learning. Yes, he is a retired bureaucrat. He's probably 75 years old, but he still took the trouble to learn about a subject since he has to speak upon it, and provided us the framework within which we should be thinking of demographics. And I think I can doff my hat to somebody like that he continues to be a learner and to be able to come. So he from Dr. Sundarajan, Dr. Ravindran took on that baton and provided us that framework within which we could move forward. He ended his presentation by saying there are three critical things from a policy framework that we need to be concerned with. One is human capital, second is health, and third is governance. So from a policy framework, he's saying governance is very important. I believe in every framework, governance is important. We can be here at a conference, we can exchange and debate a lot of things, but at the end of the day, if governance doesn't exist, nothing exists. And two, the factor of human capital, because ours is going to be the largest young population. If we do not know how to manage our human capital, we are actually heading towards disaster. So that is something that he left us with. From the keynote address, we moved on to the first plenary session. And we had the benefit of Dr. Sari Mattila from Finland, who is teaching at the IIM, who did come and share her views by providing us the difference that possibly exists between Finland and India. And one of the stark contrasts that she spoke about is that she comes from a country where the population is 5.3 million, and she's talking to a set of people who are part of 1.3 billion population. So can there even be a discussion? Can we take the learnings of a country with a population of 5.3 million and apply it to a country of 1.28 billion? I think lessons can be applied, provided the lessons that we take have the opportunity to scale. Because everything about our country is about scale. It's not small, it's big. And therefore, the last discussion that we had on Digital India, if anything can help us scale, it is the digitization of India. With proper governance, if the digitization happen, and there were some wonderful questions about how does digitization help the rural folk, and I think it was well answered. Scale will come from digitization, and therefore take the lessons from countries which do well, but apply it to our country by accelerating the digitalization process. Dr. Mattila also touched upon something, a question the lady over there asked. She's distracted right now looking at her mobile, which is to do with the tensions and pressures that digital. Yes, I'm referring to you, ma'am. You raised a question about tension of living in the digital world, and you're continuing to look at your mobile and creating tension for yourself. So what she was saying is, as happens in countries like Germany and other places, unlike ours, the importance given to higher education and importance given to vocational education is nearly the same. What she kind of stated it so well. You can create all the engineers in the world. can that engineer plant and grow a potato? Right? He can be a great engineer, but he has to eat. And if he's left all alone in the world, how will he survive? Will his engineering skills help him? No. So I think she was making a very key point with respect to the whole concept of employment, where number of speakers have said, and published data comes that 80% of engineers are unemployable. Employability is the issue. Fundamentally, what we are saying, while they may have the technical skills, they do not have the soft skills. And soft skills become so very important for you to be able to express what you have in mind, to be able to express that this is what you can do. The degree alone will not help you. The soft skill becomes very important. Life skills become very important, which today in our country we don't seem to emphasize too much. We are very bookish, we are very keen on getting very good marks, and we have instances of people getting 100% and not getting admission. So we've reached that level, and we have speakers talking also about not counseling the student, but counseling the parents. The parents are driving our children to whatever we hear about depressions and suicides. And therefore, this whole training, the parenting training that Ramesh spoke about, becomes so critical. But sticking to the point on employment, the point that Dr. Mathila was making is there must be a good balance between technical skills that you learn along with soft skill and life skill. And that, I think, she expressed it also talking about cultivation, culture, and the potato example that I just gave you. And finally, the point that she also made is in everything that you are doing, if you don't know your purpose, if you don't know your mission, if you don't know your professional capabilities, you will be fairly lost. And she also spoke about what is called multiple intelligences. In our country, the focus is very much only on, of the 8 multiple intelligences that we have, the focus only is on logical, mathematical. Whereas you have verbal, you have word, spatial, she spoke about an architect. And one of the intelligences that we have, a lot of us here have green fingers. A lot of us love the environment. But can you imagine making a career in having done environmental studies? We teach it as a course over here. I'm saying, can you make a career by doing a program in environmental studies? Which is the reason our next conference is on climate change, right? You will need environmentalists who are qualified, who can drive the balance that we need to maintain. If our children, we will get through this generation, if our children and children's children need to have a good life. And therefore, the emphasis on educational institutions itself, industry, and whoever is concerned, the stakeholders, looking at different other intelligence. I must say JN University for that extent. If you were to walk around over here, you'll find a lot of sportsmen have come out of JN University. So credit to JN University, the focus is not only on logical mathematical, which creates a lot of engineers who then become MBAs, and then they go to the US, and what a waste of money, right? On the other hand, if we were to put emphasis on sports, because sports is called kinetic intelligence. If you're able to move your hands and your legs, and you can well coordinate your eye movement and your hand movement, which is what cricket is all about, not that I know much about cricket, but those are intelligences that you have. Tomorrow we are going to have the marathon from Jane, right? That's another intelligence that you have. So Jane and the President, Chandra Roychand, I understand, is focused on a multi-purpose education that can be provided. And if somebody has this kind of intelligence, let me promote it, because that will create the Uttapas of the world. Yes? So that's the point that she was making. She also spoke of her scientific mind and so on and so forth. She was followed in the plenary one session by Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan, who was everybody's delight, the way he started off. Coming from brand management experience, he applied the same brand management principles to education, where one of his proposition was that the student should be seen as a customer. The educational institution must be seen as a service industry, and so on and so forth. The teacher as a brand manager, the university as a retail store, and he did dwell a lot upon the youth and the insight about today's youth, the generational change which has happened. And with the generational change which is happening, employment opportunities are very different. And again, Biju Kurian stressed that about his son, right? As a parent, I may know about computer science, but as a person in his youth, he knows about specialization within computer science as related to gaming. Today, young people, because of your exposure and your father's wealth, have a longer duration to explore what are some of the things that you should be going after. In contrast to that, one of the speakers, and that has been the theme with quite a few who have said that most people, because they do not get a job, they are doing their post-graduation, which is a sad case. So we know that 8 out of 10 people are under graduation. The 20% who are doing post-graduation, if they are doing it because they cannot get a job, what are the chances that they'll get a job after doing their post-graduation? Then they'll do their doctorate, and so on and so forth. I have nothing against doctorates, but it is a sad commentary, and that's the whole point of this conference, that there are no jobs. If there are no jobs, I might as well study. But we need to reverse that. We need to be able to ensure that our students, soon after graduation, are able to get into employment. And if it suits them, that after employment they feel they need additional training, you have MOOCs, you can do your post-graduation, so on and so forth. We probably need that element of freedom. And that element of freedom, I guess, will come if there is no pressure to make money right now. And as Indians, as Ishwan also said, we live in a scarce, we still, as parents, this generation, the digital immigrant, we still live with a scarcity mentality. And we possibly are trying to pass that on to our children. They, of course, resisted. But in the process, right decisions are not getting taken. So Mr. Lakshmi Narayan spoke about that. And then we broke for lunch, and then we had this wonderful man, Dr. Charan Singh, who has worked with the IMF, who has this experience working here in IIM Bangalore, at Stanford. And he said some amazing things, but one of the things that comes to my mind that he said is all our educational institutions are focused on creating managers. We are not focused on creating entrepreneurs. So managers will manage what somebody else has built, but it requires that somebody else to build that. And he did say, gave us a few statistics for a country of 1.28 billion to have just 110 incubators who will create entrepreneurs is a sorry state of affairs. And so he set a goal for himself, where the goal for him is saying that if India forms 16% of the world population, and if there are 5,000 listed companies on the New York Stock Exchange, can I see 16% of those 5,000 companies having global CEOs? And he did mention, if you were to ask people, global CEO, oh, Satya Nadella, one Indra Nooyi, of course there are quite a few Indian global CEOs, I don't want to contradict him, but his point is good. The point is that for a population of 16% of world, we should have 16% of global corporations headed by India, then it's a time to celebrate. And I thought that was a point well made. And then, of course, he intrigued us all by asking this question, which was a question by Richard Cooper. No?
What is it that Americans like about India?
And what was the answer? What is Pokhran? Thank you. I was wondering, what is Pokhran? Because he didn't decide, he didn't elaborate on it. And very many people who have born in 95, 96, you were too young to remember the Vajpayee government, that we actually went ahead and exploded a nuclear bomb, and America, for all its satellites in the world, couldn't detect that. So he was basically saying that shows chuspa on the part of the leadership. That showed a desire to excel. And we can see that desire to excel also. We are sending rockets to the moon, right? We have that kind of technology. So he connected the fact that we are not grooming enough entrepreneurs because we do not ask very many questions, we don't take enough risks. And therefore, one of the cute statement that he learned when he was small, which made all the difference in the world for him, is a professor telling him, no question is unworthy of being answered if it has come to your mind, right? And that has made a big difference to him. So we had that very excellent session that was for plenary 1. Plenary 2, we had extremely good eminent speakers, and that will be already fresh in your mind, whether it is Rajendran, CMO of Acer, or it is Vivek Kulkarni, who was a bureaucrat earlier, IT secretary, and then an entrepreneur now, and of course the third speaker. Who was the third speaker? Rajendra was speaker number 1, Sandeep Shastri, right? So you had 3 speakers here who are clearly experts in their domain. One person who's been in retail, is created a retail infrastructure, who works for a Taiwanese company, Acer, who understands what his big business is government, and he understands the kind of flawed policies that exist, because at one level we are saying make in India, but the flawed policy that exists for him is a government, when it gives an order, asks for a 5-year warranty for a product which has a 3-year life cycle. He was just giving that as an instant of flawed policies, and there will be so many that need to be rectified if we have to move forward. Dr. Sandeep Shastri, of course, provided a very different perspective to the whole thing. And his perspective from an educational perspective, from educational area, is that you will have 40 million higher education seats to fill. That is a challenge for educational institutions. The second point is youth aspiration. Youth are looking for a quality education, and they are looking for, in contrast, a government job. There seems to be a sinking lack of ambition. Not that there's anything wrong with a government job, but they're looking for quality education and they're looking for government jobs. Then he also, something that we already discussed, and he also emphasized that for success, soft skill and life skills become very important. And then Vivek Kulkarni basically told you that most of the jobs that you're thinking of getting into, you don't need to, because you're teachers, and teachers will continue to be there, Khan Academy otherwise, that many of the jobs that we consider to be jobs, we are losing out. And one of the jobs we didn't think would not exist, which is a job that you think could exist forever? Pilots flying a plane. But he's saying with drones, because that is what is used to bomb areas, which is pilotless planes. Very soon you'll have pilotless commercial airlines. So when you have a pilot whose job is at threat, what about so many other jobs? Bangalore is known for BPOs. Bangalore is known for telemarketing. It's going to be gone. So what he's asked us to do is please reflect on what is going to be happening in the future, what are the skills and opportunities that exist, and pursue that. So that was the plenary session 2nd, where we had these illustrious speakers who gave us so much of information, and the last session was the digital session. It would not be fair for me to talk about it because I'm sure it is so fresh in your mind, but I think Buchi Kurian and team made such splendid points, and he kind of summed it up beautifully by saying we are the single largest non-dependent population. He twisted what was as dependent population to the single largest non-dependent population. The question in my mind really is, non-dependent how? They don't have jobs. 75% of the people employed in the country do not have full-time employment. It's underemployment. So I'm not too sure about that statement, but the very fact that he said, now we are talking about the digital natives. Forget this old fogies like someone who's addressing you right now, but the digital natives who are here, using digital, we're going to scale, provide those services. There was a question that was very well answered by Sujay, that when one job goes, there are so many other jobs that are created. So I personally feel at the end of the conference that if we have the right policies, we will see a demographic dividend and not a demographic disaster. Let me have a show of hands. How many of you believe going forward, whichever government exists, that we will actually see this demographics being converted into a dividend? Wow. So I shall declare this conference successful, and with that, I thank you.